Hello, today I'm going to be going over the short run Phillips curve and the long run Phillips curve and how they're different and Nauru. So first thing for the short run Phillips curve, in the short run, inflation and unemployment are inversely related. What this means is as one goes up, it takes away from the other. So for example, in this economy here, we have the inflation and we have the unemployment rate. The base rate of inflation is 7% and the base rate of unemployment is 5%. Now, if the country wanted to increase or decrease unemployment, they wanted more people to be in the working force and not unemployed. Um, they would do this through monetary policies and fiscal policies, and in the short run, this would result in higher inflation and lower unemployment. So, like, let's say if unemployment decreased by 2%, so unemployment was 3%, this would increase inflation by 2%. So this would now be 9%. As you can see, they're inversely related. So let's say they decrease unemployment again. They get it down to 2% this time, from 3% to 2%. Now inflation has risen 1% to offset unemployment and is now at 10%. And so this goes on. If unemployment went up, for example, let's say unemployment went up to 7%, inflation would go down to 5%. So the main point here is that for the short run Phillips curve, inflation and unemployment are inversely related. As one goes down, the other goes up, and vice versa. So here we have the graphs for the Phillips curve in the short run and how it relates to the aggregate demand and supply curve as well. So here at equilibrium 1, we have the short run aggregate supply and the aggregate demand are at equilibrium at this point. And what happens, let's say the country, they want to reduce unemployment. And so to do that, they stimulate the economy. There's an increase in the aggregate demand. So this moves up along the demand curve. Here, we'll show that this has gone up. So this is increased, and the new equilibrium point is right here. This equilibrium point shows higher price level as well as higher output right here. And we'll call this E2. So at E2, there's a higher price level and there's higher output in the economy, and which means that there is less overall unemployment. And so the way that this would show on the short run Phillips curve is now that there's less unemployment, let's say that unemployment, it went from 5% down to 3%, there would be a corresponding change in the inflation. So unemployment went down 2 percentage points, which means it went down from 5 to 3, which means that unemployment would now be at 7. So I drew the graph a bit wrong here, but the unemployment level would now be, or sorry, the inflation level would now be at 7, and the new equilibrium would be right here. And that shows the inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment in the short run. So once again, unemployment decreased because there was economic growth, there was higher output, which also meant a higher price level. And because of that, that reduced unemployment but increased inflation proportionately. So, and now we'll look at the long run Phillips curve. So in the long run Phillips curve, the way that it differs from the short run Phillips curve is that unemployment in the long run does not change. In every economy, there is a natural rate of unemployment. Um, that is also just another term for Naru, is the natural rate of unemployment. Um, but that natural rate of unemployment does not change, even though there are efforts by the government to change that. What those efforts do result in the long run is that they result in increased inflation. And so prices will be higher, but then the economy will adjust and that unemployment will still remain the same in the long run. This is kind of like with long run aggregate supply, it's similar where in the long run, things don't shift just because the economy eventually moves back into the place and just results in higher prices, or in this case, higher inflation. So, although there's an effort by the government to decrease unemployment. In the short run, they decrease unemployment, but inflation increases. Eventually, however, the economy falls back into equilibrium and unemployment returns to the same amount. But now, instead, they just have higher inflation. So inflation increases, prices are higher, but unemployment in the long run remains the same. So although in the long run the Phillips curve does not move much, the only thing that increases is inflation rates. Naru can be moved. An example of this is job searching websites such as Indeed or Monster.com. This allows people just to naturally find jobs, and so there is a naturally lower rate of unemployment just because it's easier for people to find work. Um, but other than that, Naru can also be used as a powerful tool. Economists can use it to determine the health of economy. For example, if unemployment is below Naru, it usually leads to inflation acceleration, and then generally, if involuntary unemployment is going up, it's rising. That means that natural unemployment is above the Naru rate. So.